Work it out. 3, 2, 1. We are live. Hello, everybody. Welcome in to the Pro Football Ireland NFL podcast presented by SBK. No casino, no roulette, just plain sports. SBK 18 plus. Please be gamble aware. We'll talk about them down the stretch. Obviously, week 8 on tap. You can check out the link in the bio. Michael McQuaid, Mark Hogan, Jason Hayes. While I get this podcast out to the masses, Mark, how are you doing?
I'm sad, Michael. I have been changing my personality to not just Mark Hogan, but Virgin Media's Mark Hogan for the last 3 weeks. And now that the London game stint is gone, I can no longer refer to myself as Virgin Media's Mark Hogan. I'm just back to plain old Mark Hogan. So not as fun, but hey, we are excited that the clocks go forward. We have it written on the screen, but if you're listening, the clocks go forward, of course, this weekend. 1 hour closer to NFL football, week 8. Let's go.
Week 8 on tap, and just off IR in time for week 8. It's not Mike Evans, it's Jason Hayes. Jason, I was driving past my local centre this morning and they were selling Hayes coal for £8.95 a bag. First off, how cheap have we got it up here? And secondly, is that your family selling that?
I can't say it is. No, there is. I've looked up the Hayes name before, and apparently there's some routes up in Tyrone, kind of all over Ireland, to be honest. But no, I can't say I have, Mick. PFI is Mark Hogan. Doesn't sound too bad, Mark, so keep the head up. I'm feeling good, Mick. Thanks, lads, for filling in last week. I was obviously under the weather. It's been like 6 or 7 sleepless nights.
There we go. 6, 7. There we go. He done it.
I don't even know what it means, but I'm getting in on it. Yeah, look, I've been going through like fever dreams of waking up and watching Joe Flacco throw ridiculous touchdowns, and then next minute Mac Jones. I don't know where I am or what's happening, but I've had NFL on the television constantly over these last few days, so that's really what's got me through it. But feeling better now, thank God. Well,
I know who's taking over the podcast tonight, so we'll take that. We are live across social media. Obviously, if you're in your car on a Thursday, you're very, very, very welcome. Friday, Saturday, as I said, presented by SBK. And there's only one real storyline to start off with tonight, even though we're trying to bulk up and look ahead to week 8 of the season. We need to talk about this. Quiet week, Mark. Can I start off? As the Nordy, of course? Or what? Mark's on mute already, which is a good sign.
The microphone will be put on mute now, Michael, and we'll let you have your 6 to 10 minutes of talking about Jude McAtambry.
Nordy chat. Right, I did not want to have this conversation. I love the NFL. I love what we do. I love the growth that we have seen, not only in Ireland, but across the world. I feel very grateful for that opportunity with you lads, with Jesus, with Conal, with Dara, with Connor, with Jacob, Jeff, everybody. It's been an incredible few years. I almost asked myself the other night, what the hell is the point in it, when I'm getting death threats and messages from people saying the next time I come to the United States, they will contact ICE. And for what? Because a lad missed 2 kicks on Sunday night? I think some people on social media need to get a serious grip. And if I go too far here, Mark, we can always edit it out of the podcast, don't worry. But they need to get a grip. And there's a number of different reasons for that. First off, and maybe we'll take it away from ourselves here a second, when a lad from just outside Maharan, Swatra and Derry, leaves his village, because that's where he's from, during COVID, flies over to the US by himself and gets an opportunity with Rutgers after playing for Derry, and then somehow, through his own hard work, effort and determination, makes it onto the New York Giants football roster and gets the abuse that he has got over the last 2 to 3 to 4 days. It is a downright disgrace, some of the abuse he has got. Now, anybody who is an NFL fan, you are entitled to your opinion. If you don't like the fact he missed kicks, that's 100%. No issue whatsoever. So I have no problem with that. And I also have no problem with Irish people or people from the UK or Europe, wherever the hell you're from, having a problem with that. He owned up to it. He made a mistake. My issue is 3 different elements. The first one is what I have said, the abuse online. It's a disgrace. The lad has got 3,500 comments on an Instagram post alone. We are very fortunate that Jude has retweeted or tagged a lot of stuff that he is in and posted it up to different forms of social media. So we have seen an awful lot of stuff on social media over the last few days. And I can only imagine what he has seen against himself, his family, his friends, where he's from. That is unacceptable. It should be called out for what it is. Secondly, we have got beat writers in New York who are covering the New York Football Giants. I believe his name is Duggan. Funnily, he's got an Irish surname, works at The Athletic, who today tweeted out that he was not a professional kicker. Now, the last time that I checked, any athlete who is on the IPP program or on a practice squad is getting paid to be there. Hence, they're playing a professional sport to get paid for. Now, I thought this guy was a journalist, so hopefully he understands that now whenever I go back to him and tweet him that later on. We've also got
Michael,
Irish...
To jump in, I did tweet it. Yeah. I did. It's Dan Duggan from The Athletic. Dan
Duggan from The Athletic, who reckons a football kicker is not a professional player.
And not to just dump on this one guy, but I did say to him publicly. The tweet was, someone was given out, and in fairness to Dan, he says, I don't like the vitriol towards McTammany. Someone gets back at him, says the vitriol is because he quote unquote sucks, Dan. And Dan's response is, but he's not even a professional kicker. He was an extra leg on the practice squad due to the international exemption. And this is where I suppose my problem does come in. It did seem, and a lot of the tweets were, like you said, ice. That to me felt like it kind of strayed into something else. And it wasn't anti-Irish, it was anti-international players, that these guys aren't good enough and been hanging around. I did go back, and this is where I'll say publicly, like, I asked him what he meant by a professional kicker. He wouldn't say straight out that he was confusing it for not NFL caliber, which is clearly what his issue was. He didn't use the words NFL caliber, which again, Jude missed kicks. It did not look like he was NFL caliber the other day. He had a terrible game. We're not defending that, but get your wording correct. And then the other thing is, you were talking to extremely casual fans. You actually need to be precise with your wording. Again, you work for The Athletic, a very well-respected, I pay for them. They're attached to the New York Times. I pay for them each week. I was like, if this is the kind of journalism, you'd think it's the New York Post you're looking at here. But I went on to say, was he himself, Dan, because he pushed back then, he said, well, I wouldn't have him as a professional kicker. So I said to Dan, were you not in a position to hold coaches accountable yourself before the kicks? Because again, hindsight is 2020. And he was able to sidestep that, saying, I like Jude, so I didn't put enough pressure on the coaches. If Jude were to resign, I'd like to know if he were to say something about it, like.
Well, he just said something about it there now, and we're live right now, so I'm going to tweet it out. He's just signed. He's back in the practice roster. So hopefully he is treated as a professional kicker, and congrats to him, congrats to his family, and congrats to all the Irish NFL kickers, people in college football, people that are coaches here that have been taking a hammering over the last few days. And I'll let you boys tweet about it.
Congrats to Jude. I have to say I'm surprised, because I would not be able to go back into that environment myself. I hope that Dan Duggan puts his voice where he said now, that he does say it to the coaches and see what the coaches say back to a guy that they're clearly putting their faith in once again. Again, that international exemption spot, if you look at it, of course, we've said it, there's a huge advantage to Irish and international players because it is a freebie, and the best use of that spot is probably to back up a kicker, a position you would not otherwise have spot for on the roster. So that is a very valuable spot. Those guys are looking at them, just like some of the beat writers get to look at them in practice when it's closed off. But I think it's absolutely ridiculous to now, in hindsight, say that these guys are never professional kickers. They're saying that there's never been something on his resume. This guy, it is not Pat McAfee pulling someone out of a crowd and saying, go make a kick for $100,000. These guys are paying massive money, we know, to put themselves through off-season, to get coaching, to get to where they are. There's other guys, we know, the likes of Mark Jackson, Rory Beggan, that never got to that spot. It is scrutinized along the way. So for these guys to just come along and say a guy that went to Rutgers, went through the college system, and of course benefited from being able to take that IPP spot, we have not argued that. But it's obviously a joke to say that he's not a professional kicker and not admitting that your wording is completely incorrect. Jason, obviously we haven't let you come in on it.
Yeah, I think firstly, fantastic news. Congrats to Jude that he is back. And I think that's a testament to the character and how he's handled himself through all this. His post-game press conferences was one of the most impressive things I've ever seen an athlete go through in terms of taking accountability for what happened. And I think his character, clearly his teammates like him, the team likes him, the coaches like him. I think that's ultimately what has led to the decision to bring him back, because they're still seeing him as a net positive behind the scenes. They want him to be part of that organization. So they wouldn't be doing that unless they see him as a professional kicker, and I'm taking the side of an organization in terms of determining who should be or who shouldn't be on their roster.
Right, just a couple of things to add on to that. Thanks for Jude that's such good timing. So fair play to Jude, and thanks. Jude is, because people have asked this, and I don't think he would mind me saying this. He's fine. If anything, the response I got on Monday morning, he's one of the most motivated people I know. And we're going to leave it at that. But what I will say, just to add to this...
or we won't leave it just at that, because I actually see there's a comment there by Evan Powell. Do they complain about their Scottish kicker too? I actually thought that was extremely valid, because they're saying to get ice. And it's like, you do realise Graham Ganahl is Scottish, which I just thought was very casual of the fans. I saw Jer was after putting something up. You might be able to read it. That's great news for Jude. Giants wouldn't re-sign him if they didn't like him. Remember, he also stepped in last year, and this maybe was a bit sooner. It does go on, and that is another point. It is not a one-game sample size from Jude. We haven't seen him kick from a massive distance before, and of course, these were missed PATs. He signed that contract 2 weeks ago, having kicked 11 of the 12 NFL kicks that he'd been asked to do. It's just complete revisionist history. And look, there was also people on the island of Ireland that, and thank you for the comments that are also there saying that we dealt with this professionally. Look, Pro Football Ireland is made up of a group of fans that I think we are able to separate when we are fans and when we're not. Some people on the island were not able to do that this weekend and literally put their fandom ahead of... We were all so excited about these Irish kickers and have told that story. How do you put yourself as a fan ahead of that? It made no sense to me. So I mean, we can move off this topic if we're...
No, I think that's a very important thing just to finish off on here. And again, we're coming across very angry here, but I think people need to realize, maybe I am, but it's been a really difficult few days. I don't know about you, these two lads beside me, I have got a hounding on social media the last 2 days, and I'm not going to put up with people that are going to sit and be a keyboard warrior and do that. And unfortunately, as Mark said, there are credentialed media members in Ireland who on Monday asked for Jude to be replaced as the kicker. Now, that's fair enough. You're entitled to your opinion. But a line has to come where you're either a fan or you want to go to a game as credentialed media. And I think that's a fair enough statement to make. We've been around for 3 seasons. We do our utmost for the league. We do our utmost for Irish people, Irish fans. Doesn't matter where you are on this island, if you're British or Irish. We don't care. Right? I could care less. That's not good enough. At all. And thankfully, Jude has been signed on here again. And I hope to God, because I have no doubt now that he's back in the US and back on a roster on an exemption. I don't even feel bad saying this. I have no doubt that lad is going to get a chance at some stage in the future to prove every one of the tens of thousands of people wrong.
I would also say that it was fantastic to see people that actually use their faces and real names on Instagram show support. And we kind of talked about, we didn't want to seem to be putting out something to get likes almost, if that makes sense. But it was a way for people to express their support for Jude, and certainly that came on Instagram. Michael, you're trying to get me back on Twitter. We definitely saw the most rotten side of Twitter this week. Again, we were getting tagged in a lot of stuff because casual American fans mistook Pro Football Ireland for apparently Jude's personal account. Because if you put in Jude McIntyre into Twitter, the post that we originally put up saying that he'd signed with the New York Giants was the first thing that you would have come across. There was gifs of the Twin Towers. There was people asking, would the potato famine be able to take us all out once again? It got extremely personal, and that is racist. It crossed the line, but then there was also tweets that even I put up something responding to someone, I don't know who actually fronts his account, at Irish NY Giants or Irish New York Giants fan, that, you know, was calling Jude, and maybe it was passion in the moment, but didn't apologize afterwards. In a sub tweet to him, I did get 15 likes. That was all by Irish people who we know or we know of, with their actual faces listed in their bios. I think it's important that we can distinguish between, there is a very passionate and supportive fan base still there, and way to go you guys that were able to show up and stand up for Jude the last few days. And
just finally, because we do need to move on, it's week 8 of the NFL. For anybody, like, Jude's a lovely lad, salt of the earth. If he were sitting down and watching right now, he'd be the sort of lad to come in and have a pint with me. I've been very, very lucky to meet him a couple of times. People up there, a lot of my family are up not too far from that area. Good people, decent people. I don't want to say up Derry, but I'm going to say up Derry and move on. Now, on that fact, I want to say hello to everybody from Armagh, because an NFL team are in the Armagh County Final this weekend playing Darragh versus Cullyhanna. Madden. I thought Madden was a video game, and I wanted to bring it up and see whoever's going to annoy me over the next 2 days about that. But good luck to Madden this weekend. Week 8 of the season, how are we feeling? Jason, you look really well. You look very refreshed. I know Celtic don't play until Thursday, so I suppose it'll be...
Feeling good. Yeah, ready to talk about some football now. Where are we going to start, lads?
McQuaid heading stateside. Am I? Heading the States. My wife asked me earlier on, when are you going? I don't even know. Friday at some point. I'm going to UNC. If anybody's seen that ridiculous graphic that went up earlier on, UNC, Chapel Hill on Saturday. And I'm going to a game that we're going to talk about in a little second, the big one this weekend, the Steelers against the Packers on Sunday Night Football. And I have told these lads that I'm a game time decision for this podcast next week as a result of that. Mark, can you believe it's week 8? I can't. And I'm asking that question so I can go off and get a graphic up about Jude for Instagram. So you sort that out, and we are live. It's all good.
Yeah, no, so it's funny am I supposed to bring up the banners so we can do it live? But no, it is funny because in the graphic...
Potentially.
When I was doing this front screen earlier on, I was thinking, should I put almost halfway through the season? And I was like, no, we won't do that. It's too depressing. I said, let's go with the nice thing to remind people that is an hour early. We might as well look at that, though. Sunday Night Football, the return of Aaron Rodgers to playing his Packers. Now, it is a home game in Pittsburgh, but 4-1-1 for the Packers, 4-2 for the Steelers. I think they're kind of getting to that record in two different ways. I don't know. People were super high in the Steelers, but a recency bias is that maybe we're not as high now as we were a couple of weeks ago, even though they only have the 2 losses. Jason, is there anything that stands out for you for this game?
I wish it was in Lambeau. But look, we'll take it. I think it's such an intriguing matchup. Both teams have their relative strengths and weaknesses, of course. And, I think while we are getting behind the Steelers because of, what they mean to Ireland, particularly this year, I think that's a team that some of those flaws have been shining. Kind of been a bit up and down for them, whereas the Packers have been more start on this massive high and just not really back that up. They were Super Bowl favorites after week 1 in many people's eyes, but maybe the defense has been strong, but the offense maybe just not quite hitting their ceiling right now, but plenty of room to turn that around. But starting with the Packers defense, maybe, because that is the unit that's going to be facing Aaron Rodgers on this Sunday night. They are playing some very good football. 6th in the NFL in terms of yards per game allowed. And what we see when we watch them is just a consistent, disciplined and physical unit. And when I say physical, I mean that front 7. Whether it's pass D or run D, this Jeff Hafley unit is really run by that front 7 right now. And it's so fun to watch when they're firing all cylinders, as yourself and myself, Mark, would have seen against Arizona last week. They're elite versus the run. Just 76 yards per game allowed, which is good for 2nd in the NFL. Part of that is, at all levels of that defense. But if you want to go right to the front of defensive tackle, you've got the likes of Colby Wooden, Devontae Wyatt doing a good job in there at DT, especially with the loss of Kenny Clark in that trade for Parsons. But they're filling that void nicely. Then, of course, you've got Freak 1 and Freak 2 and Parsons and Rashawn Gary, who were 5 tackles for loss apiece on the year, just blowing up offensive tackles week in, week out. And also 5.5 sacks apiece. So a nice balanced attack. And that's not even getting into some of their deeper guys like your Van Nesses. They really can, along that whole defensive line, rotate and just cause havoc at any given week. But really, where I think I might have most fun watching this Packers defense right now is for perhaps a running back who is fortunate enough to get beyond that line of scrimmage. You're met by Edrin Cooper, a second-year player. He received all-pro votes last year. Just fantastic linebacker. And then Quay Walker, who I think really is one of the breakout names on the season. He's been there since 2022, but really we're seeing his name mentioned more and more week in, week out. And he's really a guy who's shown that he can disrupt an offense, whether it's blitzing, whether it's in coverage. he's really just causing negative plays left, right, and centre. And I think when you combine him with that defensive line, I think this is potentially, if not the best front seven unit in the league. And they probably cover up maybe a middling secondary. No fantastic names back there. They're good enough to get it done. I'm not going to say they're outright terrible. But when you have a front seven putting quarterbacks under the pressure that they are, I would like to see that secondary make a few more plays. Just 2 interceptions on the year, not a whole lot of pass defenses. When the opposing quarterback is under such duress week in, week out, and they're going to be prone to mistakes, I want to see a few more turnovers being created, because right now that front seven is doing their job. Maybe the secondary can just step up and back them up. But I do like this matchup this week against the Steelers. The Steelers' run game hasn't been great, and I think the Packers should be able to clean that up fairly nicely. And ultimately, we could be looking at a situation where 41-year-old Aaron Rodgers is up against a very hungry, talented unit who will be no short of motivation. I'm sure Matt LaFleur and Jeff Hafley will have that unit firing this Sunday.
Do you want to take the offense, Michael, at that point for the Pittsburgh Steelers? Obviously, Jason, after talking about the defense there for the Packers.
Yeah, I guess it's no. I'm happy to run in and have a wee chat about this. I mean, it's funny. I literally just came off doing a Steelers podcast there now, and one of the biggest talking points on the podcast looking ahead to this. First off, obviously, this game is a rematch of the Super Bowl in 2010. We all know what happened on that night. Aaron Rodgers was a very, very happy man. For anybody that actually cares, that was his second ever NFL game I watched, so it worked out pretty well. I still remember sitting in Belfast. We got a projector, we put it in the wall. So shout out to everybody living in the Stramillis Road. It was a fun year, lads, wasn't it? It worked out all right in the end. The thing that's really enticing me about the Steelers offense, and maybe it's because I've been doing a podcast with the team for the last couple of years, but sort of looking into it so deep every week, have they ever been to the point post-Big Ben where they have a guy under center that can just get it done and hand it off to anybody? Pat Freiermuth last week finally coming alive. I think 2 touchdowns on the night against the Cincinnati Bengals. And Jason talked about the defense for one team. I ain't going to focus on the defense for the Steelers. I know I'll be talked about in a second. Doesn't matter about the defense. Going into this week, they've put up 31 points against the Bengals. We've seen what they've done in Dublin. They've had a bye in the meantime to get fresh, get ready. The only thing that they're really limited themselves to is having a wide out in terms of a WR2. It'll be interesting to see what they do before the trade deadline. But when you got DK there, when you got Jalen Warren there, Kenny Gainwell there, a bit more, I would say, Jason mentioned a bit in the run game, a bit more needs to be done with that there. But the reality is, I think Jalen Warren still had 130 yards or something against the Bengals last week, albeit maybe not a superior defense in terms of the Packers. I love the matchup. I really feel like we're going to see, I pray to God, we're going to see vintage Aaron Rodgers and DK in this game. And I guess the biggest question is, will Aaron Rodgers be given enough time in the offense to actually allow that to happen? I think the Steelers' offensive line is 100%. But when you look at it through 6 games, 14 touchdowns, there has been 5 interceptions, even if a couple of those picks have a little star beside them. Rodgers, at his age, and what he can do and what we expect of somebody that age, is leading in every way that he can do. He is playing still at a very, very high stroke elite level, and it's frankly leadership. Look at the way he comes off the field with Mike Tomlin, with Cam Hayward. You'd think they've been there for the guts of 10, 20, 30 years. It's fun to watch. I'm excited to see what can happen, especially once we see Calvin Austin, who's in a contract year, come back a bit more. But I like the Steelers in this matchup on Sunday night. I think with the game being at Acrisure, I think there's going to be a lot of pressure on them to win because they've got a game next week. Anyone know who they're playing next week?
Ravens.
The Indianapolis Colts in Pittsburgh next week. They have to win this game. I think the Steelers are going to put up 30-odd points against the Packers. The big question is, yeah, that's a big statement to make. The big question is, will Green Bay do that? Not sure in the uniform. And I feel like I can confidently say that 24 minutes into a podcast without getting in trouble for saying that.
Yeah, you mentioned that they don't have the wide receiver too, but I think it's important that Rodgers is comfortable with Freiermuth. I don't know, did I say it on here or where? I said it somewhere, that the frustration that he had with Freiermuth after a couple of weeks, I didn't think they'd get on the same page. So it was massive to see him get 2 touchdowns the other day and that big, huge, long gainer. What was it, 30 yards in the air and then 35 yards after the catch. And then Darnell Washington getting in for a touchdown as well. I think it's just important to show that there's levels to the offense. Pass catchers there.
And I will just mention that if there is one area that the Packers haven't been stellar, not that it's a struggle, but they do allow top 10 most yards to tight ends in the league. So we know how Rodgers loves those 3 tight ends, Johnny Smith as well. So that might be an area that we're going to see them exploit.
Yeah, and you'd hope to see it, obviously, coming off a massive offensive day. But talk about massive offensive day or lack thereof. I suppose that's what sums up the Packers right now. Like, we came into the season, certainly I did, my Super Bowl pick, hoping to see Jordan Love as the MVP. And we know that their ceiling is really high, but will we ever see that high ceiling coming off another, can we call it an unimpressive win, Jason, against the Cardinals? They can't have any of the excuses of, injuries like other teams have. Jaden Reed is obviously on IR, but other than that, like, even how you get Josh Jacobs to be able to go game time decision that goes in and scores a touchdown later on in the game. To get Christian Watson back this week as well, or if they don't play him, he's going to be out for the season. So you'd imagine they're going to run him out there this weekend. But I just wonder, is Matt LaFleur too conservative for an emotional game like this? And in Pittsburgh, it's going to be huge. And you say, Jason, you want to see it in Green Bay. Yeah, I do, for the Aaron Rodgers effect, but I also want to see the Aaron Rodgers effect with his new team. The Pittsburgh Steelers fans right now, he and them have a fantastic relationship. They're absolutely loving it. But the thing about the Packers offense is they get it done when they need to get it done. They're number one in explosive play rate, and it kind of reminds me of the LA Rams. The LA Rams don't have, or didn't until last week, have a strong red zone offense. They're built for playing the ball downfield, but when the field gets a bit congested, then they just don't have it. So when you are Green Bay and you have wide receivers who want to get separation, that's great when you're 1st and 10 or whatever. But funny enough, I saw the stat that the Packers are best at converting third down, but they're awful at doing it. Not awful, but they're definitely middle of the pack between like 3 and 4th or shorter. Whereas 3rd and 7 and beyond, like 3rd and long, that's when they get into that groove, because again,
they're like 47% conversion on 3rd and long.
40, I think it's a 40. I think
maybe it might have gone up against AZ, yeah.
But this is the thing. It's like they're built to be that kind of level of explosiveness. But then Jordan Love, I suppose, I don't know, does Matt LaFleur trust them to just, let him cook or whatever? Mm-hmm. So, like I started this off, are we ever going to see those ceilings? And I suppose it's a good feeder this weekend when you're in an emotional game. It's going to be a huge atmosphere because of the Aaron Rodgers stakes. We have him on the graphic. He'll be he'll be the 5th quarterback. Do you want to name the other 4? I certainly can't, to beat all 32 teams. So, I mean, I think it's huge. I don't think that's, specific to this game. Huh?
Brett Favre.
Name them in quick succession, otherwise you're going to lose the listener, please, Michael.
Brett Favre, Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, and let's go a ridiculous one. Let's say
Drew Brees.
Dan Marino.
No, Drew Brees always played for the... Oh, no, it's Drew Brees ever beat him with the Chargers?
The Chargers briefly. Didn't play for them much, but he was there briefly.
Yeah, maybe.
Interesting. Okay.
Bledsoe, maybe?
Maybe. We'll see.
We'll move off that. So, yeah, I don't know. If I had to pick a team, though, I think I still have to pick the Packers, because while they haven't had impressive wins, they've certainly been able to get over the line, kind of like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, maybe?
Kind of like Liverpool. That's a different conversation maybe to have. Let's round up this part and let's use the Panthers conversation maybe in the second part, because I feel like the Jude thing has probably dominated this, and we'll do that for the podcast. We obviously are live right now. You can get your questions in as well. But for people on the podcast, you're obviously very, very welcome. For now, we're presented by SBK. 18 plus, please be gamble aware. I didn't say that last week. I forgot to say that, which is pretty important to say that. Do you know what I mean? We will see. For now, on this part, we will chat to you soon. Thanks for listening. Okay, part 2, baby. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. Hey, welcome into the second part of Pro Football Ireland's Week 8 NFL podcast presented by SBK. 18 plus, please be gamble aware. Please feel free to check out the link in our bio if you're interested in betting on the Week 8 slate in the NFL. I had a look at the bets. I actually pre-recorded the picks podcast with Jeff earlier on today for this weekend. And my God, some tasty odds, including the Bears going up to face a big challenge this weekend at a massive amount of odds. And the Chiefs are no value whatsoever. Different odds on our website. Check out SBK NFL. Today we're joined by Mark Hogan, Jason Hayes back in. Mark, what are we going to talk about now, lad? What's the crack?
Well, do you know what? I'll give you a nugget for those that are listening live. And if you don't listen to part one and you just go straight into part two, you'll have no idea, which is this great poll, Jason. The 4 quarterbacks that have beaten all 32 teams are Brett Favre, Tom Brady, Drew Brees, and Peyton Manning. Good shout, Jason. You obviously got done with the Chargers.
Hold on. I got Flea, to be fair. Like, you know, it's not.
Yeah,
bad.
no, but Drew Brees is the one that we all weren't going to get. Like, Drew Brees is that's the poll there. We're not giving you points for.
Does
Tom
everybody
Brady
remember seeing him at the Super Bowl? And he like I don't know if this is like a full saying across the island of Ireland, but like he wasn't the height of two turf. He was really small. Does anyone actually remember that? Were you there, Jason? No.
Jason trying to get Patrick Peterson and Drew Brees on the podcast, but they both rejected us, I think.
They rejected me. I had his agent was a nice guy, but no, that's one of those guys in Radio Row that his schedule is just jammed. You don't get a free minute with those type of guys.
We have found a new person to work out on Radio Row this year. In terms of Pro Football Ireland news, there we go. Look at Mark messing up the schedule. Hey, I'm only messing, lad. Heading to college football this Saturday with the Aer Lingus College Football Classic, UNC Virginia. Sunday Night Football is this weekend between the Packers and the Steelers. We'll be on site for that. I want to give a massive shout out to Darren Connell, who went over last weekend to Alabama and had the time of their lives. Big shout out to SEC Network as well. And we may or may not be sending somebody, Mangan, to the Ireland-New Zealand game next week for NFL. None of these lads know this. For NFL content. And you're talking about Radio Row. We met a guy on Radio Row who set it up. Basically, I'm like,
it's not Rob Mann setting this one up.
No, it's not Rob Mann. It's not. So I don't want to say the guy's name and get him in trouble. But we've literally floated a document which says we're going to talk about the history of Soldier Field. Because Ireland's playing New Zealand next week. I don't know. Whole different. There's a lot going on, basically, all right? Looking forward to it. We're actually in Madrid and Berlin. Can you believe that is in 3 weeks' time?
No, I've not looked past this weekend. It's the first way a Dublin game or having to work on TV or going to London for all of us. So this one, and of course you're going to America, so that statement makes no sense. But that's where my eyes are. 1 week at a time. The season will be over if you look too far ahead.
Yeah, it's interesting in the sense that I don't even know if we even have flights booked for that yet. That's how our lives are at the minute. And Mark mentioned TV. Can I just give a massive thanks to everybody that tuned in and watched that over the last few weeks on Virgin? It absolutely killed me not going to those games in person. But part of me is glad that I missed that Rams-Jags game at the weekend. It didn't look great. I want to thank Stephen, who's probably listening and watching as well, for his help with that there. Just before we continue on, to remind people, in case they weren't listening to the first part, you can listen to a full rant about the Jude McAtamney situation on that. And he was signed to the practice roster literally when we were live. So just in case you weren't aware about that. Mark, big game this weekend. Cowboys going to Denver. Denver took until the fourth quarter to score any points. And then the team they were playing let in 33 points in 15 minutes. But that's a different conversation for a different day. This is a pretty good matchup this weekend against the Cowboys.
It is the number high defense. I'll get into it now in a second. It's
the number high.
You know, because I don't want to go to the odds, the immovable objects, it's the unstoppable force. Like, I suppose that's probably being used across the NFL right now. If you want me to start off, and it is with Vance Joseph's scary defense, I say it's one of the most feared in the NFL, third fewest in yards, fourth fewest in points. Does that apply when you get the offense on the other side that's able to move the ball more than anyone and scores the second most points? So it definitely is a tasty matchup, especially when these teams 3-3-1 and the Broncos 5-2 is just outrageous. So the Cowboys offense, Jason, I'll let you get into it in a second, but everyone's talking obviously about Emeka Egbuka for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He gets the same balls thrown his way, same number of balls thrown his way as George Pickens has for the Cowboys offense. They have the same yards per touch, which is obviously really impressive, but actually George Pickens comes in with more balls. So George Pickens is having a season. Add in now that obviously CeeDee Lamb is back, and one of those guys can't be covered by Pat Surtain, and obviously that's been huge for the Denver Broncos this year when they've been going up against, you know, teams that have one particular wide receiver. Jake Ferguson, obviously the tight end, getting some yards there too. But one thing that's definitely stood out to me, and it's something that I'd focused on before the Denver Broncos came to London, was obviously we know Pat Surtain is able to lock down guys. We've seen him do it to AJ Brown, Jamar Chase. He shadowed Garrett Wilson in London. He'll probably take CeeDee Lamb, you'd imagine, but Riley Moss on the other side, the cornerback, I suppose Denver trusts its talent and isn't afraid to put guys on islands. Against the Eagles, that didn't work out for Riley Moss a few weeks ago, but now I suppose he's just been a huge development for the Denver Broncos defense. I'll talk about why in a second, but if you actually look at the numbers, he's been thrown at 11 more times on the season than Pat Surtain, but only allowed 3 more catches. Mikey, you just talked about New York last week. He and Surtain allowed no completions to New York Giants. So it just shows. So what's the benefit of that? The benefit of the coverage is obviously the blitzing. Like, that's the most scary part of the Denver Broncos defense. You don't know where it's going to come because they literally bring it from all over. They're on pace, we had mentioned on the broadcast, if you missed it, for the record. I think they're on pace right now for 82 sacks on the year, which obviously absolutely outrageous. They have 34 so far, but they've come from Nick Bonino has 8, Jonathan Cooper has 6, and then 3 others have at least 3. So when you don't know where that pressure is coming, when you're sound on the back end, and you have Jalen McMillan as well, the nickel cornerback, he's able to blitz or he's able to drop back. It is a very scary defense, and the run is no joke. The run defense is no joke too. That this is obviously a supreme test, because we saw what happened last week. They're able to give up points, obviously, to the New York Giants, but do they lock in against someone like the Dallas Cowboys?
And just starting on the Cowboys, second fewest sacks allowed by that offensive line. So you could say unstoppable force, immovable object there, Mark, in terms of that Denver pass rush against the Cowboys offensive line. But I think just Cowboys offense in general, obviously, you touched on it there. It's been electric, leading the league in virtually every statistic or top 5. And above all else, they're fun to watch. I really like watching this Cowboys offense. They're almost want to say they're a bit old school in the sense that they have a good run game. They take their shots downfield. They're aggressive. And I think it's a refreshing type of offense to watch in 2025, where scheme and numbers and cover 2 and all this seems to reign supreme. And you're watching the likes of the Chiefs and the Eagles and some of the top tier teams in the league produce just enough on offense to win games. This Dallas Cowboys team is like an offense from 10 years ago to watch. And that's really what I like about them. And a huge credit to offensive coordinator Clayton Adams, a name familiar to many Arizona fans, who's just turned this unit around and really taken them to the next level. Look, you can go across whether it's passing or running. Each player is playing some very good football right now. Dak Prescott, you have to start there. He's maybe looking the sharpest he has in his career, or certainly since he had that near MVP season a couple of years ago. Very high red zone efficiency. He's brilliant in the pocket. It helps when you have a good pocket, but he's brilliant at managing that pocket. And simply put, he's making some great throws. He's second in yards, second in touchdowns in the year, and he's firmly in that MVP running as of right now. And the weapons around him, naturally, massive part of that success. You know, Lamb, coming back from that injury last week, made himself shown straight away. That deep touchdown. Pickens, as you say, Mark, he's right up there, 4th in the league in yards. He also has the most defensive pass interference calls against him. So I think that's really a byproduct of his downfield threat, and Prescott taking those deep shots to him, and cornerbacks, maybe it is Riley, floundering, trying to cover him. And then you have Jake Ferguson, who's the chain mover. He's top 5 in the league in receptions. So if you don't have the electric guys out wide, you can always trust Jake Ferguson to keep things going. Him and Pickens, second in the league in touchdowns with 6. So if you can pick any player in this offense, and they're in that top 5 in the league in their respective statistics, including Javonte Williams. If you want to look at the run game, a crucial part of that passing game success is what they're able to do on the ground. And Javonte Williams is second in the league in rushing. It's going to blow his career totals out of the water that he had with Denver over the last 4 years. So a nice return to home game for him. And then you've got Miles Sanders pitching in when needed. Both guys averaging upwards of 5 yards a carry, I believe. So the offensive line doing a tremendous job blocking for Prescott, creating holes for those running backs. This offense is fun to watch. And I think really question mark is more on the defense in terms of whether Dallas can push on and make a run for the playoffs, because there's enough teams ahead of them right now in that NFC race despite this success and having arguably the best offense in the league, it is a tough road ahead for them.
I love how Jason has put me on the spot in terms of it's on the defense, and I have to now talk about the defense. Thanks very much. I actually really wanted to. I think Jason. So we pick topics on WhatsApp, and like it's basically who replies first seems to get it. And because I'm lazy and Mark seems to organize everything.
I let that go for about 16 hours. I put in the topics yesterday, and I got back this morning being like, "Here, I got it for." Something here.
It's been a busy week. Been a lot of issues this week with multiple issues in social media. With a big thanks to another team in the NFC East for that. It's funny, if you look at who the Cowboys are playing between now and the start of December, they've got the Eagles, the Chiefs, and the Lions coming up. And Jesus, if you're any defense going up against any of those, you want to be in a good position. It's funny because when you look at the Cowboys defense and think to yourself, where have we been pre-Micah Parsons, current Micah Parsons, post-Micah Parsons? The Cowboys always find ways to lose when it matters. Certainly in my lifetime, that's been the Dallas Cowboys that I know. I hope that changes at some point, but that's always been the way of it. We all know that if you have a good defense and have at least some sort of compatibility on the offense, you're going to have a decent season. You know, if they can find a way to get some sacks, find a way to turn over the ball, who knows what can happen if they have a competent offense. Well, I'll tell you what, they had 5 sacks last week, and they had a competent offense and scored a really, really impressive defensive touchdown. And look what happened. They had a blowout. What was it, 44 points last week on the game, lads, wasn't it, against the Washington Commanders? They looked really, really good. Now, look, that being said, it wasn't the most perfect defense you're ever going to see. It's probably not the standard in the sense of they're giving up way too many yards. What, at least, was it 23 or 24 points or 22 points last week, lads, against the Commanders? Giving up too many points. The pass rush isn't there, especially before Jayden Daniels wasn't there, and tackling needs to be improved on. But certainly, you know, they found a way to use a bit more man coverage and make Jayden Daniels uncomfortable. And look what happened to him when it happened. Because whenever they were going up against guys like Jalen Hurts and Russell Wilson at the start of the season, how good did Russell Wilson play against them? It's just, it's been such an incompatible or such a just inconsistent moment for this team, because you feel like they could take that next step and they now go in against the team, which I'll talk about in a second because it's relevant to this defense, where I feel like they could really put on show this week away from home. Jadeveon Clowney had his first sack. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, Mick. Sorry.
Jadeveon Clowney had his first sack since making his debut. Obviously recovered the fumble for Daniels. But I think on top of that there, what's made this good and what's made it easy, you see obviously Kenny Clark was in and out of the game last week. There's different guys stepping up and allowing themselves to put themselves in that position. Schottenheimer I've been really, really impressed with, not just in terms of getting these guys on board, but with his game management. And I look at how this defense is ready and primed to go in to Denver if they can get a bit of man coverage on Bo Nix and allow and ensure that this team is not getting as many points on the board as we expect. Frankly, if anybody had told you last week the Broncos wouldn't have scored a point through 3 quarters, after London you wouldn't have been that surprised, but the week before London you would have thought that you were absolutely mental. The Dallas Cowboys, just whisper it right now, defensively, when you have different guys like Trevon, I know he's still in concussion protocol, but we expect C. Cooper to be back very, very soon. In a few weeks' time, this defense could really, really be in the upper echelons. And I feel like Jason doesn't agree with me and he wants to jump in.
No, I think you're talking sense, Mick. I think it's.
I know they have the Cardinals soon as well. That's probably the only problem, isn't it?
Yeah, well, look.
What a drive by.
Dallas is Kyler Murray's town, so we're going to see him come back that week. But no, I think it's funny when you see. It's funny when we see the likes of Max Crosby being linked to the Cowboys now in terms of a trade acquisition. It's like you got rid of Parsons, and now you're discovering you're a team that needs that one guy to take the next step and be a proper threat. And who is that guy? A pass rusher. Well, look, you had him, and it would be interesting to see if they do try and be aggressive and push themselves over the edge. I think big talking point this year is big word being used this year is the word parity, because the NFL seems to just be the best teams haven't ever been this bad and the worst teams haven't ever been this good this year. I think Dallas Cowboys have to be the face of parity in my eyes in the league this season. You know, they can draw a game with the Packers, they can lose to the Panthers, they can beat the Commanders, and now it has them sitting at 3-3-1, perfectly 500. I think spokesperson of the season this year has to be the Dallas Cowboys.
Interesting. Very interesting. I think we're going to get some new Cowboys fans after our comments on this podcast this week. And for anyone that says, you never talk about our team or you never give us the opportunity to talk about this, I mean, we're going through the motions here. We're going through as many as we can here, Mark, aren't we? We're trying our best.
Yeah, we are. And that would have been a perfect segue if we wanted to go to what I think will be our third topic. There is 3 teams that we probably haven't looped back around to for a while. And actually, it's a kind of a follow-on from last week where we got to 2 others, just to kind of mean that we've spoken about everyone recently. And here's actually, we'll go to a different game though first and look ahead to the Carolina Panthers. When have we ever done a game preview with the Carolina Panthers? I don't know if there's been too many. But of course,
Germany last year, probably.
Maybe you're dead right. Yeah, 4-3, and actually, I wasn't on that podcast, so I actually cannot confirm I was not there, so I do not have it in the list. But at 4-3, it was me and you last week, Mike, and we said we might be looking at this game 4-3. The Panthers going against the Bills, who are no great shakes at the moment at 4-2. Moving to 5-3 would be absolutely impressive from the Carolina Panthers, and in a world where Jason describes such a level of parity, every win is going to mean massive strides in the NFC race. I don't know, do you want to talk about the Panthers offense to begin with, Michael? Obviously, there is such a resurgence there with Bryce Young, and I suppose it has started, I think, this resurgence with him.
Yeah, and funnily enough, when you mentioned the name Bryce Young, it feels like his stepbrother Andy Dalton has to be mentioned in the same sentence because they're literally joined at the hip at this point in the NFL. Love both of the guys, of course, but NFL sources, or maybe I've been watching too much Pat McAfee to say sources, have indicated that he will not play this week. Bryce Young, he is out this week. Expect Andy Dalton to come in. Andy Dalton, since 2023, has appeared in 12 games, 6 starts, 5 of them came last year. He finished, wait for it, his 5-game stint as a team starter last season with a 1-4 record. 66.3% pass completion, 7 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. We'll not talk about that. One of the main things for me, Mark, and Jay Hayes Cole, on the Panthers offense going into the season is the time it's taken for this team to gel. But you genuinely feel, and I can't believe I'm saying this with a C in mind, but you genuinely feel like the ownership may have found a way to not only move the offense forward, but the team forward and the city forward. People seem to be getting back on board again in Charlotte, which is something I'd investigate for Pro Football Ireland in North Carolina this weekend, I promise. For example, wide receiver Jalen Coker was given an extra week of practice before they brought him back up from injured reserve. Chuba Hubbard almost got 2 weeks to recover from a calf injury after he made it worse in week 4. They're not rushing Leggett or Turk Wharton, and they're giving guys time. So whenever you look at Andy Dalton coming in, he's a capable backup. He's a guy that they're going to allow to bring in and at least see the crack in terms of where he's going to be. You're going to actually bring a guy in that knows this offense, knows this city, and frankly, he's going to be able to get there in terms of that. What they done last week, now I actually had the pleasure. Now, what Mark will not tell you when he goes on there about TV a wee bit is that he gets a wee lift to a place where I don't legally think that we're allowed to leave him off to. I wouldn't know because I'm not a resident of the Republic, even though I had to pay extra on my car insurance this week to include the European Union, which killed me inside. But what Mark doesn't realise is I had to spend 2 extra hours in the car on a Sunday afternoon after these games. And I had the pleasure last week of listening to the Carolina Panthers take on the New York Jets, and sweet Jesus, so those 2 hours in my life that I am never getting back. It's funny, they're taking snaps away from guys like Rico Dowdle. The running back rotation in that win against the Jets was a bit strange. It was quite clear to me from the get-go And anybody that knows exactly what's going on in terms of the situation with the New York Jets, the whole situation was obvious. The Jets can't score points. They can't get it down the field. They'll be lucky to hit a field goal. Run the ball. Find a way to run the ball. Find a way to get it going. Anyway, Hubbard has a track record of moving the chains. We knew the fact that he was going to be the main running back on that drive last week. 10 points for Canales. There was ways and means at times last week that the offense looked like it was really gelling. I was really impressed with the leadership, and you could see a real growth in confidence from Bryce Young whenever he was on the field. I just felt for him in the sense that he was going down a bit, but certainly this Panthers game this week where you bring in a guy that knows the team and has allowed themselves to get to this point is in a good spot. I'm rambling on here. I will say one more thing. The offensive line has been very, very impressive. For too long, it has been absolute dirt. But that being said, when you look at what Canales and what Dan Morgan have been able to do, they have signed long-term deals to guys like Damian Lewis, Robert Hunt, 150 million on the board. You bring in a guy like, obviously, Cade Mays coming back in, Josh Nyman. Tackle that in together. These guys are actually protecting Bryce Young and now Andy Dalton a lot more than what they would have done. And I think it's been very, very impressive. Through 7 weeks of the season so far, they have fielded 6 different types or 6 different lineups of this offensive line because if a guy's coming in, guys coming out. And for so many teams around the league that are struggling with offensive line issues, they're finding ways to make it work. I have no doubt that they're on the way up. I would question how much they can take it this year, but we'll see what happens.
Well, do you know what you're saying? Bringing protection there, and I suppose it's a good diving off point for the Bills defense, who coming to town this weekend, like you said, Michael, is Chuba Hubbard, but Rico Dowdle, I suppose, I don't know, does he feel hard done by that when Chuba Hubbard came back, that Rico Dowdle did split the carries last week? Now, it means for an opposing offense, there's no let up. Like, you know, you're getting 2 ferocious guys that are going to be able to pound the ball on you. Rico Dowdle had 500 total yards in 2 weeks. On the ground, he had a 206-yard game, backed it up with a 183-yard game. Obviously, it stagnated somewhat last week, and the offense didn't look quite so good. Maybe that was an opponent. I won't belabor the point. But it does tie back into the start of the year. Buffalo's point, they were going out week 1 against the Baltimore Ravens, and we talked that week about how they had built up the D-line because of needing it for the postseason success. That's what cost them in the playoffs back in January. And they were building for January 2026. I don't know if we're saying that the Bills are building entirely for 2026 right now because they need to look after what's in front of them right now. The reason I bring it up is because Larry Ogunjobi was kind of an asterisk that we brought up that week, saying that he had to serve a 6-game suspension. The same for Michael Hoy, the defensive end. He's kind of less important piece. But the reason I'm bringing it up is because those 6 weeks end this week. They're getting some reinforcements. It's not like they've been completely banged up. We've seen some of the rookies be able to make a bit of an impact. Deon Walker being especially who I'm talking about. Ed Oliver now, again, is healthy. He missed weeks 2 to 5. But when you have this tandem coming to town, and you are probably going to be as healthy as you're going to be for the rest of the year, even though these guys are coming in, they haven't been playing all year, those 2 suspended guys. I think it's important to show something because, you know, it will be seen as the beginning of the year. Absolutely every Buffalo Bills fan, based on what we'd seen from the Carolina Panthers last year, would have put this down as a win. If the Bills suddenly lose this and go down to 4-3, you're going to be talking about it very shakily. Obviously, we haven't been super impressed by their defense at certain points throughout the year so far. I know now there's no point saying, wins that were given before week 1 are important, but I think the Buffalo Bills, this is a team that they're capable of beating, but this is a team that they also can show glaring holes, and especially in the run defense. So when I say Rico Dowdle, I'd love to see him shoulder a massive number of those targets, because obviously it was just a bit jinky when Chuba Hubbard stepped in the other day. And that's where the Carolina Panthers offense has been successful based on. It's like because of that run, that play action that teams have had to prepare for, it's opened up the defense a little bit. So they've been able to attack it with Bryce Young. Andy Dalton should be able to do that. You'd imagine probably a bit more of a quick passing game as well. So I think it's definitely an intriguing matchup for the Buffalo Bills. And I'm not going to give the Carolina Panthers a disservice and say that this is a banana peel game. Again, their record is they have 4-3, and the Bills need to take them seriously, or it could be another loss.
Yeah, it has the feel of a trap game, despite the fact that Panthers are 4-3 and the Bills have lost 2 in a row. So there's absolutely no reason why it should be a trap game. And I'm sure there won't be a single coach on that Bills sideline that's treating it as such. The Bills haven't won since the 28th of September, which is a long time ago now. And if the Panthers can get a win this week, that will be a winless October for Buffalo Bills. Don't think any of us saw that coming at the time. They really were firing on all cylinders a month ago, and some of their statistics, at least on offense, still reflect that. Third in the NFL, 378 yards per game. But the last couple of weeks, things haven't looked quite as smooth. A lot of that can be pinned on the defense, but I'm sure Joe Brady would like to reestablish his identity, which he's created over this last year and a bit. James Cook has been the leading back and the leading face of this offense, if you want to even go that far, this season. And the offense has looked its best when James Cook is the guy they go with first. 537 rush yards. And when he's humming, the offense as a whole runs a lot smoother. Josh Allen, he's pitching in the running game as he always does. 250 yards and 3 touchdowns as well. So in terms of rushing attack, that Bills unit looks very strong. And I think if you want to go back all the way 2 weeks ago now to that Falcons loss, they probably got away from that identity a bit too much. Cook was having success on the ground, but it's almost as if Brady went into the game with a game plan of giving Allen, full reins and a lot of complex passes, quick passing scheme, crossers and stuff like that. And it just you just felt, hang on, okay, they've had the slow start, but maybe just hit the reset here and just keep running it with James Cook, because that's ultimately what's gotten you your success so far. It's what makes life easier for Josh Allen, and that's where you've won games. But instead, we saw a game where Josh Allen was very uncomfortable. He was under duress. That Falcons pass rush is very fast and really got to him that game. Few sacks, a couple of picks. And that's ultimately where you're going to see the Bills struggle, is when they lose track of that identity that's got them to where they are and into that strong position in the AFC race. In terms of the passing attack as a whole, we've discussed about it before, so I won't harp on about it too much, but it's not like this team has a go-to wide receiver right now, which isn't inherently a bad thing, but it's like freakishly balanced right now in the sense that Kincaid, Shakir, Coleman and Palmer, ball could go anywhere. They all have about 250 yards on the year, so it really is completely balanced in terms of where Josh Allen can go, which, as I say, can be a positive thing when the defense can't exactly just, put a Patrick Surtain on their ex-wide receiver and scheme him out of the game. You really can't do that when the offense is running this. But in crucial game situations, when you're trying to mount a comeback, when you need to convert to third down, when you need a touchdown in the red zone, you do still need those 1 or 2 targets that are going to win you a football game at the end of the day. And I would like to see at least one of these guys for the Bills, ideally Keon Coleman, maybe just emerge a bit more and become more of that go-to guy. Maybe right now he's being seen too much of as that fade jump ball deep threat, which of course with his big frame and athleticism, that is a skill set that he leans into. But maybe Brady can do more to scheme him open and give him a few more simple catches instead of just these 50-50 contested catches consistently. Because if we see a guy like him emerge and Josh Allen get a legit threat, I think it can only help the offense when they stick to what is already working for them, which is that run game. It isn't an easiest matchup this week. Panthers, quiet top 10 unit on the year in both pass and rush defense. I think particularly that rush defense is probably stronger because of that defensive line. And we saw some of the success that defensive line had last week against the Jets. 6 sacks, and Derek Brown, the star name there, wreaked havoc all game long. It was the Jets, however. So can the Panthers slow down that run game? Key question for me to watch in this game.
Yeah, I think overall, I think the Atlanta Falcons, and look, I'm not going to just say every team has their defense. I think that that's going to be the script that the teams that are able to compete with their defense against that Bills offense are going to follow, that like don't respect the pass game anymore until they prove that they can spread the ball out. And that's when the Buffalo Bills have to respect it once more, because it is just like literally defend against Josh Allen and, you know, dare teams to or dare the Bills to punish you for blitzing.
We're gonna finish off on a few teams, yeah? That's the plan.
We are going to finish off on a few, Michael, as I bring up the things.
Like
some
a
of the teams
blitz.
that we
Can
haven't
we call it the blitz?
gotten around to in the last little while. I suppose, Jason, you've just done the fair share of talking, so I guess I won't start with you, just because last week actually you were supposed to talk about the Chicago Bears, but you weren't here to give it a mention. Michael, why don't you talk about the Texans?
I'm happy to talk about the Texans, and I want to just give a public acknowledgement to anybody that set up and watched that game the overnight. Seriously, my hair looks ridiculous. It always does. That's a different conversation. That game started at 3 o'clock in the morning. You know, for an international fan base, that's not easy, because I woke up at 6 o'clock and watched the Lions-Bucks game, like the highlights properly. And by the time I had finished those highlights, the other game had just ended. So that's ridiculous. And I know it's not.
Here, I don't know if that's ridiculous. I was in my taxi at 4:45 watching the Seahawks Texans game. I was, what is going on here? There's live football and I'm going to work.
I suppose you have to go in earlier to report the traffic in the north. Let me just have a time difference and stuff. That was meant to be a joke. I am joking. It's all good. Just before it leaves my mind, Jude passed on his appreciation to everybody and thanked everybody for their support. So I wanted to just mention that in this podcast in case I didn't get a chance to. Yeah, look, funny enough, if you wouldn't believe it, but when you look at how this team lost against Seattle, I mean, there are concerning situations, there are concerning elements that are popping out. You know, this game technically was a one-score game, but if you actually looked at the actual game, you can quite frankly tell that the Houston Texans have a number of issues. They're sitting at 2-4 after a few weeks. Same number of wins as the Cleveland Browns and the Las Vegas Raiders. And, you know, these are two teams that we expect that aren't going to make a run this season. You know, when you look at how this team has went in from where we seen them about a year and a half ago to the off season that they have had, with the changes they have had, it's not great. And frankly, you would have to start asking questions in regards to where they are. You know, if you actually look at from last year to this year, some of the games that they've won, I seen a great article in this week. Some of the games they've won 2 games over a guy called Cooper Rush, 2 games over the Titans, 6 wins over that sort of. I'll actually try and put this up or put it in the comments or something. They've literally won 6 games over a spread of these certain teams. It's an absolute ridiculous situation. And the fact that they're now talking about Nick Keeley, the offensive coordinator, so early in the season about trying to get him to change, it's not good. It's not, more importantly, it's not giving CJ Stroud a base to feel protected with. He can't keep drives going if he doesn't have the protection. And whenever the Houston Texans go up against a team that can stop them running the ball, they're absolutely screwed. I don't know what Keeley was thinking on Monday night with some of the calls he made, trying to run into the middle of a defense, but at the same time his offensive line was getting absolutely done. I just don't understand. I would worry for the Houston Texans overall that they're going to make silly decisions at the end of the year, and one of them would be potentially getting rid of or giving a word in a year to DeMeco Ryans when we know what they can do. But the reality is, when it comes to the NFL, and we have learned the hard way this week, it's a not for long league. If you're not getting the results, there's been certain teams that have made harsh and rash decisions over the last decade, and one of them is certainly the Houston Texans, who like paying people, like cutting people, and like firing people. They missed a lot of opportunities in the game, but for me, they were way, way, way second best. And I get that the Seattle Seahawks team are a good team, but I'm definitely concerned with where the Texans are going forward.
Yeah, especially given their record. Yeah, not for long. That's what happened because no one looked past the Houston Texans for that division before the year.
They have 11. They have 11 games to go. By the way, just putting
yeah.
like
Well,
11 games.
When you said that this early in the year, I was like, "Hey, Michael, it's week 8." Jason, I don't know if your voice is back yet, so we'll hold off on the Chicago Bears talk as you continue to recover. And I'll say, I was looking at the Saints, a 1-6 team whose record is probably a bit tough. I know we're licking our wounds as Cardinals fans. 13 points in 5 straight combined losses. Whereas the New Orleans Saints are a bit like that. They have shown that they could win a game, even though they've only won the single one against the New York Giants. And I suppose I'm being positive, but it'd be very easy to do this exact same about what I'm saying, to look at it negatively. And it is that their question this year was at quarterback, and that's what the whole season is about. The 4th highest rated quarterback under pressure in terms of QBR is Spencer Rattler, and he is facing pressure at the 4th quickest rate. So through 6 weeks, it looked really good. 6 touchdowns, 1 interception, and again, looking competitive. But I guess I better get the ugly stuff out of the way. He's coming off a 1 fumble, 3 interception game, and questions are certainly literally off the back of that one game. And we're talking about the not for long league. Off the back of that game, is his career over essentially? Does he need to get benched? I saw positives, and one of the interceptions say, they play off play action. He skips out of the pressure that seems to come then. He steps up into the pocket and directs Khalil Shahir downfield. You can see him literally doing the whole pointing thing, but then he just overthrows and gives an absolute floater into Kevin Byard's hands. But I suppose he needs to obviously have a bit more touch on that pass, but I'm still like, the way he escaped the pressure, I still like. To give another example, against New England, he faced more blitzes and again continues to step out calmly and makes a throw to Chris Olave that I kind of thought, well, have I been watching too much of the pressure facing against Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields in London the last 2 weeks? Because I was like, this guy literally looks like Drake May. These are not gimmies that Spencer Rattler is facing. Again, the offense maybe is built in a way that protects him. 4th quickest time to throw. His QBR is ahead of 2024 first rounders Bo Nix and Michael Penix. I don't think that is something to balk at. But I suppose we were weeks away from, and maybe we still are weeks away from, Spencer Rattler's name joining the annals of high-profile quarterbacks like Desmond Ridder. Malik Willis is obviously still playing. And I was actually thinking the first quarterback that came to my mind, Jason, was actually Josh Rosen. One of these high profile guys. And the reason I say Josh Rosen was like, he was 2018. He was a part of that draft class that was Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, Josh Allen, and Lamar Jackson. Like, it's not that far gone. Like, again, in the not for long league. But if you had only looked through weeks 1 to 6, the answer was there for Spencer Rattler. Again, I'm saying there's massive similarities with Drake May for me, the way he's able to read the pocket and escape the pressure and stay calm, really importantly. There's obviously a lot of work to do for that New Orleans Saints team, but to be able to get an answer there. Tyler Shough, remember, was drafted to win the training camp battle and hasn't. And the first time his name has been mentioned was after a week 6 or week 7 ugly loss. I like watching, to surmise, I like watching the New Orleans Saints. And maybe that is just like you had talked about, Jason, more of the commentary on the NFL this year, that it's to do with parity more than anything else.
I think, firstly, every time you mention Spencer Rattler's name, every time I talk about Spencer Rattler, I just smile because of that.
I missed all this.
Hanging out with Spencer Rattler. And yeah, it's like I wanted him to do well as a result, hanging out with him the Wednesday before the Super Bowl, before we all had interviews to do at between 12:30 after midnight and 3 a.m. We had a load of, and Spencer Rattler, all he wanted to do was hang out. And Jason, I think you did have a great night. Who was the other quarterback you had? Oh no, a tight end that night you hung out with?
Will Levis.
Will Levis. You hung out with Will Levis. I was going to include him in the annals of quarterbacks whose names will be forgotten very soon.
Just to stay on that very, 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 very quickly, you're talking about hanging out with players and stuff, right? I'm not sure if people seen this today. They've announced the Pro Bowl games are going to be on the Tuesday of Super Bowl week now. So that's going to be a
in
fun
San
night
Francisco.
Tuesday
They've
night.
moved the Pro Bowl from
Yeah.
Florida to.
So it's going to be a flag football game on the Tuesday night, which means everyone's heading out after on the Tuesday night.
Where's our media party gone on the Tuesday, Michael?
Don't worry about the media party. We're going to the flag.
Are
football
they all
game.
coming?
Flag. We're going to the flag football game, lads.
Maybe I'll finish us up with the Bears, another team we haven't mentioned in a few weeks now, who I was due to mention last week. Apologies, Bears fans, I was out. Look, Bears fans will be feeling very positive about the team right now. They've rebounded from an 0-2 start to 4-2 right now under Ben Johnson. And he's really almost made things a bit boring in Chicago, which I think is a very good thing. You know, that offense hasn't set the world alight yet through 7 weeks, but what they are doing is consistently putting points on the board and giving the team a chance to win. 21 plus points in every game this season, the only team to do that in the entire league. So it really is a case of they're going to score mid-20s. Can the defense do enough to get the team to win? Caleb Williams, it's been unspectacular, but I would say solid at quarterback. He's avoiding the big mistakes, or at least he is for the most part. He had one last week, but just 3 interceptions on the year. And what I really like about Caleb is that in a couple of games there that the Bears have won against the Raiders and Commanders, there was a couple of comebacks. He looked very composed for a few game-winning drives in the fourth quarter in those games, which is what you want to see from a young quarterback. And I think it's a good sign that new head coach has got him feeling confident and sure of himself in the passing game. Running game looks pretty good. Most recently against the Saints, actually, they went for 222 yards. DeAndre Swift was a big part of that, and rookie Monangai, both averaging over 4.5 yards a carry. We've got Rome Odunze making some plays, and if there's one thing on offense that you'd like to see more from right now, maybe it is tight ends. First round pick Loveland has just 8 catches on the year. Hasn't done too much. He had 3 catches last week, so maybe that's a sign that they're getting him back into the offense more. Been banged up a bit as well. But in terms of creating that sure thing target, we see a guy like Dak Prescott targeting your Jake Ferguson over the middle. These young quarterbacks like to have that big frame, check down guy, maybe just stick route, 5 yards, simple stuff. I think it helps to work some tight ends into the game more. Seen a bit from Cole Kmet, but not a whole pile. On defense, I think we've spoken about them maybe once or twice this year. They do have their flaws. It's given up 26 points per game. That's some of the most in the NFL, and it's not like they've played the most stellar teams along the way. I think what's really saved this whole team right now, particularly the defense, has been timely takeaways and sacks. In this 4-game win streak, on the opening drive, the defense has either got a takeaway or forced the opposing team to go 4 and out. So when you're making some game-changing plays like that, it's okay if you're allowing a few too many yards. And in fact, they actually lead the NFL right now, 16 takeaways as a whole on defense. So it's not quite bend but don't break. It's more bend and then just make a splash play and change the win percentage of the game in chunks rather than consistent good play. But look, as I say, I think Bear fans will be feeling good right now because it is a step forward through 7 weeks. They're 4-2, winning record, looking very solid. They have a chance to keep momentum going over these next few weeks. They've got the Ravens this weekend. Lamar Jackson's back practicing. Just saw Schefter tweet that a while ago. So that'll be an interesting game. Then they've got the Bengals and the Giants. So if they can even go 2-1 over that stretch and get to 6-3, then I think this will be a happy team, and they'll still be in the mix deep into the season. I think their biggest struggle right now is that the middle class or the upper middle class of the NFC looks very strong right now. Who are they going to overcome? Do you fancy them against the Niners, the Rams, the Seahawks? Do you fancy them against the Lions or the Packers, the Cowboys, if you want to throw them in there? In terms of making the playoffs, I think there's a lot of decent teams ahead of them that I just don't think the Bears are at that level right now, despite their record. But look, feeling positive and a lot to work on moving forward.
And they're on course, Jason. That's the big thing. Like, this season was okay, we need someone to come in here and settle everything down because it's a fire show right now. They've done that. It's make Caleb Williams feel comfortable. It's show the fans that there is an offense there that can be there. The growth is there, like you said, Loveland or Burden, like they're draft picks this year. They can continue to build with something versus there was just quarterback problems and sack problems and everything that goes along with it. That I suppose, yeah, if they get into the playoffs and lose in the wild card round, that's still mission accomplished this year because it shows that you had massive growth with a first-year head coach. It shows that that first-year head coach has something cooking, and it's just massive to say that we don't have to go through it all over again. So it's like, I don't know if we ever said the playoffs had to. We thought that they'd be in the playoff mix, but this is literally exactly the season that everyone kind of was like, this is probably the most obvious, but a good case scenario.
On the PFI Picks podcast with Jeff Reinbold this week, presented by SBK, of course, we both pick the Bears to win this game this weekend. There you go. Big odds as well. Check it out. That's us. Really strong return to form from Jason Hayes. Jason, well done to you for getting back in the saddle this week. I know you've been not 100%, so we appreciate
Michael, I
it.
don't know what you're signing off for. We haven't even looked at headache. Once again, you've forgotten that headache has to happen.
Does it have to happen? I don't have a headache in my head, but I'll say it right now. Who are the Giants playing?
I don't know. It's down on the bottom of the screen if you can enlarge it quick enough, Michael, please. As you do that, I will say my headache is ESPN missing Jaden Daniels on Monday Night Football. He's out. It doesn't seem to be long term. But yeah, Marcus Mariota has filled in for him. His accuracy has been a bit down, but it's more of the coronation for the Kansas City Chiefs that I'm worried about. Their first standalone Monday Night Football game since week 5 when the Jags beat the Chiefs, and we saw the narrative that set. As we see the growth from the Kansas City Chiefs in a primetime spot, I think that they are going to come out being the story, one of the big stories from week 8.
I'm so happy I'm flying whenever this game is on Monday night. I'm only messing. I think I'm going to miss like one quarter, but at least Jaden Daniels is out. I'm just going to say, give me Will Shipley, the backup running back for the Philadelphia Eagles, to have 2 touchdowns against the Giants on Sunday. Jason, who have you got?
Stick with the Bears. DeAndre Swift. He's playing some good football at the moment, and as the Ravens this week, that Ravens defense has struggled across the board, particularly against the run. DeAndre Swift, good at getting to the edge. It's been a weak point for the Ravens, so yeah, DeAndre Swift.
Okay, that's us. Just
Michael, as you finish
everyone,
up, I am trying to flash some of the comments that we didn't get to on the screen. If we missed them, obviously, sorry for that. I don't know why Tony Daly thought we were talking about Celtic, though. Did Celtic come up when we were talking about Madden?
We should probably talk about Hearts instead, Jason. Maybe we'll talk about that next week. Well, hey, I'm only messing. Can I just say, a massive thanks to everybody who has supported us this week over the last few days. It does mean an awful lot. It's sad to see certain people that aren't that supportive, even though there are fellow countrymen and countrywomen. But that's how it is. That's life.
You know what, Michael, don't worry about them, because we've seen great support in the comment section today and on our Instagram. So way to go to the Pro Football Ireland and NFL community on this island. It is positive when we've seen our namesake over in America not be so kind to Jude. So proud of people on this island the last few days.
And granted, and just to finish off, because I haven't said it, 1 hour and 20 into this, hopefully here's the end of this. I want to thank Reese for some of the photos and videos taken over the last couple of weeks in London. Superb. Big thanks to everybody. A big team effort. Everyone's keeping this going. Be a friend, tell a friend something nice. I'm only messing. But just, lads, thanks a million for everything. It's been a good week. Hope you enjoy week 8. Big thanks to SBK. Do check out the link in the bio if you can help us in any way. Clicking that link does help. We will chat to you soon. I'm a game time decision for next week. Enjoy week 8, folks. I'll see you in Pittsburgh on Sunday night.